Hi, I'm Eric Stromberg with Stromberg's Chicks and Game Birds, and today we're going to be talking about brooder basics and how to get ready for your baby chicks and how to successfully raise baby chicks. So if this interests you, watch this video. Welcome to Stromberg's Chickens Brooder Basics video. We're going to be talking about how the 5 elements that you need to raise your baby chicks. So we need feed, water, heat, space, and light. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about feed. Here's a baby chick feeder. You can buy these on our website at strombergschickens.com. But let's first talk about what goes inside these feeders, the actual baby chick feed and what it is. Well, baby chick feed has a higher protein ratio than regular chick food or adult chick food. So baby chicks need a little bit more protein in their feed than adult birds do. So baby chick food has about 18% protein, and if you're raising baby guineas, which these are baby guineas, or if you're raising game birds or turkeys, you're going to want that protein percentage even higher because they need a higher protein percentage to have those baby chicks be successful. Right now they're growing all their feathers and their muscle and they're just developing, so they need that higher percentage. So for game birds, quail, turkeys, 28 to 30% turkey or game bird starter. For baby chicks starter food at 18%. Now some people will have you feed a medicated feed. Now that medication is a coccidiosis preventative, and baby chicks usually get coccidiosis from a lot of unsanitary conditions. They get it in warm, humid areas where you're raising them. So if you're worried about coccidiosis, by all means, go ahead and purchase a medicated chick starter. That'll help you get off to a right start. And then now we're going to talk about the actual chick feeder. We've covered the feed. Let's talk about the kind of the anatomy of a chick feeder. There's many different sizes and styles, and we have another video that discusses chick feeders, but we're just going to kind of talk about this generic chick feeder here. What makes this a good chick feeder is, for one, we have a larger capacity with this larger plastic jar. It's easy to put on there. You can see these holes. Well, what these holes do, they keep the baby chicks from actually getting into their feed and walking in their feed, or having droppings in their feed. But it doesn't allow them to bill out or get the feed out of their feeder and onto the floor of the brooder. So that's a good feeder. It also breaks apart, makes it easy to clean. And plastic is obviously easy to sanitize. Once again, you're going to hear me talking about sanitation this whole entire time. And truly here at Stromberg's, we believe, good sanitation is key to success for your baby chicks, so you always want to keep that in mind. So now let's just talk about feed and when your chicks first get there, their first days. So what I usually do with baby chicks and feeding them on their first days is I always put down a layer of paper towels here. And on those paper towels, I will sprinkle out a little bit of feed. You can kind of see I already did this before I started the video, coaxing these little guys out from underneath their brooder. And you can see these guys, they're picking at their feed. And I usually do that for the first 1 to 3 days. I don't want to do it any longer than that, But what you're really looking to do is they're really curious right away. You can see them pecking at everything, and they're figuring out what their food is. And so you can see these guys, they're pecking, but kind of once they figure out, hey, their food is in their feeder, and they start really eating from their feeders, it only takes a few of them to figure out, hey, this is my feeder, this is where my food is at, and then you can stop putting the food on the floor. And you don't want to just continually feed food on the floor because they will be starting to get into their droppings, which is unsanitary. As I mentioned before, that is a way to get coccidiosis, and so we don't want them to be eating off the floor and getting into their droppings. So that's one thing there. So that, I think, covers us for chick food. Now let's talk about the waterers. So here we got a baby chick waterer. You always want to make sure you have clean, fresh water for your baby chicks. Once again, key to success there. Let's first talk about, you're getting your birds in. First things first, related to water. Well, what do you want to do related to water with these baby chicks right away? Well, as you're taking them out of the box, you're going to take them just like this. You want to pick up your baby chicks real gently, and you're just going to dip their little beaks in the waterer, they'll start to drink. And you're gonna wanna do that to each of the baby chicks, right? Oop. There he goes. Gets a little water, you can see him drink there. He tips his head back. Grab this little guy, dip his beak in. Oh, and there's my 3 baby chicks. All my baby birds. I gave them water, and you can kind of repeat that on that first day that you get them in. You really want to give them, make sure that they know where their water is. Just like the feed, they've got to get used to, hey, this is my water. This is something that I need. These are one of the 5 elements that we really need to be successful with these baby chicks. So that's why we can repeat that, and maybe you want to repeat it on the hour every couple hours that first day. You just want to make sure every chick is doing that, and then watch their behavior. Their behavior is key here. You want to make sure that they're drinking, and once they start drinking, you don't have to continue to dip their beaks in. So you'll notice, let's now talk about the water itself. So this water right here is called a no-drown fount, and it just screws into any mason jar, or we sell like a plastic jar here. You can screw it into this larger plastic jar. And I really recommend these no-drown founts, especially for the first, maybe like week. The reason why we call it a no-drown fount is because it doesn't allow your baby chicks to drown in it. Well, what makes that possible is this very small watering trough right here. They can't fit their whole heads in here. All they can fit is that little beak, right? So they can't get their whole head in there, and they can't kind of get in there and drown. And so that's why they call this a no-drown fount. And it's very important that they can't get in there. It's also important that they can't get into their founts because they can get a chill. So now here's another water. It's a very good water. We sell these at Strawberry's Chickens as well. But you see how wide this watering trough is compared to this one. Well, that wide watering trough allows the birds to get in there, and they can, for one, get a chill. Number 2, they can also make a mess of their water much faster this way. Now, some websites and some forums will say, hey, use marbles or rocks in here, and put a bunch of marbles in here. And so then the baby chicks, they'll still have access to their water, but they won't be able to drown that way either, or they won't be able to get in there. Well, while I don't disagree that that does work, I find it hard to clean the marbles or the stones that you put in here versus just cleaning this water. So at Strawberry's, we always say, sanitation is key. I would recommend this no-drown fount over this one, especially for those first stages. After about a week, switch to this one. They'll have better access to the water, and they're not quite as susceptible to those chills. We do sell a larger water. This is a gallon waterer. Very easy to clean this one. You fit your whole hand into it. It's got the no-drown lip, but it's also a gallon capacity, which means you're going to be filling these a little bit less, especially if you have a lot of chicks. Now, one thing to consider putting in your water right when you get your baby chicks could be this vitamin electrolyte formula. Now, this is just a scoop to a gallon, or this is a quart container, and it would just have a marking on the scoop to be able to mix that in. So this is one thing that you can add to help in the success of your baby chicks. So now that we've talked about water, let's talk about heat. So now we've got 2 different brooders here in the video. You only need 1 brooder or heater. This whole thing is called a brooder, but this is actually a small brooder here. And let's set this back up. So first, let's talk about this brooder here. This brooder is going to be what's called a 250 watt lamp brooder, or a single bulb brooder. And what it uses is just a 250 watt light bulb. And you would hang this or clamp it, and to get to that 95 degrees, and that's about what the baby chicks like, is 95 degrees. And we always suggest using a thermometer to know exactly what the temperature is. You're going to want this about 18 inches off of the brooder floor, and you always want to find out, what is that temperature right underneath the brooder. Now, you don't want it any warmer or any cooler than that. And what I always say with these is I suggest using a chain. I got a length of chain here to hang them. And you might want to use 2 chains off of this, and you might even want to use the clamp. The pros of these brooders, they're very economical. You can buy these inexpensively, and they're very easy to set up. Now the cons of these brooders are they're not very energy efficient. Using a 250 watt light bulb, you're going to be heating a lot of this area in this room. You're going to feel a lot of heat coming off of this brooder. Now, also with this one, you know, I'm showing you, hey, I want you to make sure you have a chain on this, and I want you to make sure you clamp this onto something. Well, why would I tell you that? Well, the reason why I'm telling you that is they are a fire hazard. So if a brooder like this falls into your brooding area, what can happen with this 250 watt light bulb is it can catch your brooder bedding on fire. And it is known to happen, and it does happen throughout the poultry world here and there. And so we do always want to make sure our customers are safe and they're, you know, securing this properly. And you always want to have this guard in place. And so that's the 250 watt brooder. One other thing with this, so you're going to start it off at 95 degrees and you're going to slowly work it up, decreasing by 5 degrees each week until you hit 70 degrees or the birds fully feather out. That would be when you would move them into their coop. So, single lamp brooder, you'll see that many times. So now this brooder is one of my favorite brooders. It's what's called a radiant heat brooder. And this model is a Brinsea model from, it's called an Eco 20. So now that means it's good for brooding 20 chicks. And as you saw, you can adjust this. So I kind of kept this loose so I can show you how to adjust it. And sometimes you'll just leave it right up against the ground like that. Now this brooder isn't going to heat this whole area to 95 degrees. But what this allows these birds to do is they'll nuzzle right up against this, almost like it's the mother hen. And that's how they almost self-regulate how much heat they're getting. So they'll come in and out from this, and you really want to make it, you know, low or, like I said, on the ground so they can choose the amount of heat they're getting. I do always still suggest, you know, put a thermometer underneath that so you can tell what it is. But this is a more it's not going to be economical to purchase right away, but the running costs and how much energy you're going to use from this brooder is going to be quite a bit less than your 250 watt bulb. Actually, we have a video comparing the energy consumption between these two, and it is quite a bit, and we'll talk about the differences between them in that video. But this would be called a radiant heat, and that's where the birds are just right underneath there and getting the heat directly, and you can see they'll choose when they want to come and go. And so there we've kind of covered two different styles of brooders, so you want to make sure that you have these set up before your baby chicks come. If you're going to be using the bulb brooder, you're gonna want to make sure that 95 degrees is attained before the birds are even anywhere near the post office. I suggest setting that up 24 hours in advance. Okay, so then the next is going to be light. And so what you're going to want for light, now with the hanging lamp brooder or the 250 watt light bulb, you don't really need to supply any other light than that, especially at night. But if you are using one of these radiant brooders, I do suggest, you know, doing a daylight cycle of, you know, 15 hours of daylight, and then at night you would want to almost give them a night light or just a soft light bulb, or, you know, it doesn't have to be direct light on them, but enough so they don't pile up in the corners. That can be one issue. If you just leave it completely dark, they can panic, pile up in the corners, and suffocate themselves almost. So you want to just make sure that you give them a little bit of a night light. All right, and so then the next thing we'd like to discuss is space. So now you can see this brooder, it is plenty big for especially these 3 little birds, right? Well, what they do suggest is a half a square foot per bird, and so you want to make sure you're giving them that. And the biggest thing is you want to make sure that your birds are comfortable. Now with the heat lamp brooder, you're definitely going to want to make sure, since it's heating this huge area, you want to make sure that you give them enough space not only to get close to the brooder heat, but to get away from it. So you want them to be able to cool down when they need to. And that is one big thing that some customers don't think of, especially on their first time, is that they don't give their birds enough space to cool down from. Now, with these brooders, it's not quite as critical that they can get as far away from it, but like I do suggest leaving one side down and one side up, so they can get real close to the heat, and they can go from cold, where the side is further away from the brooder floor, to warm, closer to the brooder floor. And that's how they'll regulate their heat, and then by using this space away from the brooder as well. Sometimes with these radiant heat brooders, I do suggest putting the food and water closer. So especially the newly hatched chicks, they don't have to go as far to get their food and water. One last thing that I'm going to talk about, your baby chicks, and I touched on the vitamin electrolytes in the water. The last thing I'm going to touch on is we do sell a product that's called Grow Gel, and this is a great product, and I just mix it right here. Very easy. It's like nutritional jello for your baby chicks. You'll see these guys, they know what they're getting. They've already been exposed to this, and so what I'll do is I'll just mix this up. Real easy to mix. And what this has is it's got probiotics and vitamins. And your chicks, you'll see these guys, they'll go nuts for it. But they like it. They're curious enough, just kind of like the feed on the ground. They start to eat it. They realize that it's high in nutrition, and then they continue eating it. We can send this out with your invoice very easily with your order. So that's Brooding Basics from Stromberg's Chicks and Game Birds. I hope you enjoy brooding and enjoy those baby chicks. Thank you.